its own regulation to cut down the number of non-conforming rentals. Granting Mr. Newman's request would make any such enforcement a lot harder, in fact, probably impossible. If it is good for him, if it is good enough for him, why is it not okay for me? Is a difficult argument to counter. He is rich, so gets what he wants. It's also not an accusation that the town needs to walk into. Saying yes to this would be the equivalent of abandoning any rights to say no to just about anything in the future. Please say no. Sheer size. The Airbnb occupants of a nearby small Cape Cod on minimal acreage had a tour bus unload a large number of partiers. The Newman house is huge by comparison and on a large property. At 5,600 square feet house on a 60 plus acres could accommodate very large gatherings, which would necessarily have an impact on the neighbors that we would not want. Imagine lots of tents and loud music on a regular basis. Please no. I drive locally a lot, and our roads have already been adversely affected by the increased stranger traffic resulting from existing Airbnb type rentals. The Schultzville Road and Willow Lane are essentially, for most of their length, one-lane two-way roads. Also between Hampton Court and the Salt Point Turnpike, stop sign are in several places where you simply cannot see, but if anything is coming in the other direction, locals drive slowly at these points and move as far to the right as possible. I personally have been forced off the road twice by drivers just hogging the middle. Transient strangers, drivers with no experience of country roads or just out of a fling have already made roads more crowded. Imagine how much worse things would get if the Newmans were to operate an event venue. We have a pleasant residential neighborhood here. When people live in an area, rather than merely invest in it, they look out for each other and tell each other if movers or strangers and contractors are going to be around. We never until recently stressed about locking our doors and cars. It could significantly affect our property values if the house on this hill is not a home, but a party venue, and residents no longer know who belongs and who doesn't. That's it.
Okay. Did you gather that was aimed specifically at this application or in general?
Some of it seemed to be there. It's both, right? It addresses this application specifically as well. I think the concern here was about the size of the house and, you know, the ability to have a large number of visitors.
Am I allowed to respond to it?
I think the size was specific to this, but the other comments were all generic, which I think, to Pat's point, are more geared toward the town board, right? The theoretical about what it means to have Airbnbs in town. But
actually, that's correct. This is Ann Tyson, if you can hear me.
Yep.
I believe this is a specifically larger problem than other problems might be, simply on the sheer size and the infrastructure impact. But the concept of non-hosting Airbnbs, I think, is a concept that has implications outside of the size implication.
I know. Well, if I just respond to that letter, one thing from the last meeting from the town board, we discussed about the limited people. The house was built with a 1,000-gallon septic tank, so maximum that we would ever have at this residence is 6 people, nothing more. Though we could easily have 8, but we're going to stick with 6 because that is just the safer. And it's also, I think it's better for anyone around the neighborhood. And the main purpose of why we're doing the short-term renting is so that the family can keep the house, because my father had passed away about 8 months ago. And so it was a decisive decision either to rent it out to either make money for the house or that we sell it. So if you're looking at the long term of things, if we were to not do this, the implication is that we would have to sell the house, and 64 acres, in my understanding, it's 5 acres. Someone could buy this up and build us, what, 12 homes? So.
Well, you know, that's a different discussion. The fact that you could rent this to a limited number of people does not restrict, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, does not restrict the number of people that could attend events here. And it's the actual use rather than the number of residents to whom you rent that is a neighborhood-wide consideration, I believe.
I mean, we will monitor the house to making sure that if we have guests, that if for some reason they went against our back and brought more of their friends, I don't know exactly what the punishment would be, but we would not be happy with that guest at all.
In other words, you're saying you're nice.
No. Okay, can I just?
Unresponsible, and I truly believe you. I'm not arguing with you on that, but this will not translate, as far as the town of Clinton goes, into, well, these people were responsible. It will translate into a permission given that will, to my mind, make it impossible to deny permissions going forward on any basis, whatever.
Well, let me just.
Which is my fear. We are already in the town, in this immediate neighborhood. We have many unacknowledged short-term rentals. And
can I just, this is Paul Thomas. I'm your neighbor on Willow, and I'm on the board. I just wanted to, before you get too far, I just wanted to respond to a couple of your points, if I could.
Sorry, who's this?
This is Paul Thomas down the road.
Oh, Paul, yes.
How are you? How are you? I just a couple of, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just wanted to.
Oh, feel free.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things this is not, that there will be a limitation both on overnight guests and on daytime visitors to the property. So it will not just be the goodwill of the owner, it will be in the permit, it will specify the number of people who can use this property, both as overnight guests and just as visitors. And the number of visitors will be capped at no more than 6. If that's violated, that will be a reason to deny the permit or to revoke the permit. And also, this is not being approved as an event center or event space, so they can't hold weddings for money or big parties or anything like that. That is not the approval that they're getting. And the only other thing I wanted to add to your points about enforcement and regulation, the town did, as you probably may know, pass a regulation that governs this type of thing, which is on the town website. And enforcement, unfortunately, in a town like this is often keyed to citizens bringing, complaints. And so if you have issues that you want to raise, along these lines, you should go to the zoning enforcement officer in the town and say, I've noticed 7 unpermitted Airbnbs in the area. Here's where they are. You can do it anonymously. I mean, people don't always like to do that, but that avenue is available to you. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, but please continue.
No, okay. My experience in my 30 plus years in the town of Clinton has been that the town of Clinton is known in the county for its lack of enforcement. Part of the reason that I think we have issues is lack of enforcement. The most egregious zoning violation I can recall was on Willow Lane, and the town of Clinton refused on budgetary grounds to enforce its own regulations. They were shamed into it by a group of neighbors who paid the legal bills, but that's a long time ago. But the idea that concerned residents can raise issues with the town and have the town enforce its own regulations is something I have a little how shall I put it? I'm a little cynical about it, put it just that way. Okay, so the fact that technically maybe there are routes to enforce these regulations, it doesn't fill me with confidence, put it that way. I think we have been stuck with a lot of illegal short-term rentals. We are still stuck with them. And I am opposed, I don't know about the rest of my neighbors, but I am opposed to permitting what could be the thin end of a not very attractive wedge. That's it.
Well, as Paul said, I think it's up to the citizenry of Clinton to let the town board know how they feel about this issue.
Well, I guess you know how I feel.
Well, unfortunately,
And my neighbors, to the extent I've talked with them, which I have, because we have a very communicative neighborhood here, agree with me. Whether or not they've said so, who knows? That's their issue, not mine.
right.
But
I'm not arguing.
whatever. But Paul, I mean, Paul, you have neighbors on your street who are violating the town's regulation.
Right.
We have people with 5-acre lots with 3 hot and cold running, flushing, livable units on those. God knows what the building permit said, but anyway, we have a lot of violations. And to my mind, allowing something this mega, and this is mega, would prohibit us from having any credibility as a town to enforce anything if we're going to allow this. Because the only time you can complain is afterwards. Meanwhile, we've already let it happen.
Unfortunately, that is not our job as a planning board. We have to go by what the town board law that is in effect now and work with that as it comes before us. Regulation and enforcement we can't do that. It's not in our purview to do that. I wish it was sometimes, but it's not. So again,
But if the
you have to get to the town board and let them know how you feel, and get a bunch of your neighbors and go to the meeting and let them know how you feel, because I'm sure you're not alone in this.
I'm not, am I the only person to go to the meeting, as it were? I know I'm not the only person to feel the way I feel. I know I'm not the only person to have sent written input. I guess I maybe was a little over fulsome. Sorry about that, guys, but you know.
I think, and what Art is saying is we're just not the right board to talk to. We are implementing the laws as they stand.
But your decision is discretionary, is it not, when it comes to unhosted short-term rentals? Most towns, or several towns in the Hudson Valley neighborhood, have been less permissive, probably being cognizant of their own enforcement lacks. But the fact is, if you guys, I mean, somebody has got to take the responsibility for this. When you say you're implementing it, why would you send, if it was simply implementation with no discretion on your part, why would you send certified letters to local residents and invite their contribution? Is it just because you think their contribution won't happen or won't be significant? I don't know. I mean, that's a legitimate question. I don't know the answer to that. But what I sense is a passing of the buck and people not wanting to take responsibility for saying no. Okay. I mean, that's it. You're the town, you're who you are, you're doing your job. I'm just opening my big mouth as usual.
No,
Okay?
that's quite all right. That's quite all right.
I'm not apologizing. I'm just acknowledging that you'd rather I didn't put it that way. Okay?
No, we're happy you made the comments.
Well, at least I'm interested. Put it
Very
that way.
interesting.
All right, is there,
I'm interested and whatever.
Interested, sorry.
Okay?
all
Can
right.
I
Is there
question?
any-
Other
is-
question?
Is there anybody else in the public who would like to comment or ask a question on this?
I would like to ask a question. Is there a list of
Identify yourself again, please.
Pat Cortese, 7 Willow Lane? I already asked and mentioned, Anne, I don't think you were here in the beginning of the meeting, but I was,
I wasn't. No, sorry, Pat.
so I did have, several questions. But my question now is there a list somewhere of the Airbnbs that have gotten the permit in the proper way? Is there a list of those? Because we all know that there are many that have been operating without permits before it was legal in the town. It was actually illegal in the town because it wasn't legal to have a short-term rental. So is there a list of that we can, so that you're saying we should say, oh, there's an Airbnb there and here, but we don't know if they're permitted or not. So how would we?
I think Pat, it's Paul.
Yeah.
I think the zoning administrator, that's a very, very good question. And the zoning administrator will have such a list, and whether it's available to the public, I don't know, but I will find out.
Well,
It's a
All right,
very good, it's a very good question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Pat, so we have Granicus working on this, and we're in the process of gathering that list and everything.
can't understand you. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah, you said there's a list that they're preparing.
Yeah, we have Granicus. The town is working with Granicus, the short-term rentals.
All right, you're fading.
And we're in the process of sending letters, and we're in the process of getting a list who was,
Pat, I will find out for you, okay?
Yep.
Okay, if it's not available to the residents, what use is it?
I know, I'm not saying it's not available, but let's just figure it out. We'll figure it out.
It needs to be, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
think that's
Completely
right.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. We'll just find out. I'll take that on as my homework.
All right.
Because Willow Lane is rife.
That will be my. Oh, yeah.
It's rife.
All right.
I'm interested myself, so we'll find
Is
out.
there any other comment? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Justin.
Okay, discussion. Okay, all in favor? Art, aye.
Cat, aye.
All right.
Okay. All right, now let's move on to the actual application. Kat, we've heard from Alex a couple of times already tonight, so you want to go ahead with any questions you have, and then the board can jump in?
Sure. So I think, thank you, Alex, for answering the questions for the public. It is, a relatively, tight road, and, we kind of went through the concerns in the last few meetings. I understand now that you did the research on the septic, and, we got acknowledgement that this can only be a six-person max capacity. You were okay with that?
Yes.
And we've gotten all the outstanding paperwork. One of the things, I mean, I hear the concern around traffic and things like that. One of the things that we do require from the hosts is to provide clear instructions to the renters, including, local kind of traffic safety and things like that. So I imagine that will be something that you will be providing to the guests.
I find it hard to believe that transient guests will realize the
Please.
hazards on the Schultzville Road. Sorry, I know you've closed the public hearing. I will shut up now. I apologize.
Thank you. And you will be screening the guests prior to arrival. I mean, it's your family home. You're still going to use it. How much time do you think you will be using it yourself for your family versus renting it out?
The time frame, most times we're going to be renting it is during, let's say, beginning of late April, and then probably till the end of the summer. And then the rest, it's most likely not going to be hosted to guests. It will just then be for the family. So there are going to be gaps for months where we're not even renting it out. Did you ask like how long, like resident wise, like how much of the guests, like our family is going to be using it?
Generally, what the split is between are you going to rent it out 5 months of the year, 6 months of the year? You just answered that.
I would say it's between 4 to 5 months
Mhm.
of the year. We'd be renting out to the public.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any other questions. I know we addressed the ag statement, we addressed the insurance, Arlene, right? So I think again, from my perspective, yes, it's a large property. We're limiting the capacity to six visitors. The license is issued for 1 year. If there's any issues, the neighbors, can call the CEO or the town. Any complaints will be kept on record if there's, so they will be considered for any reissuance of the license the following year. Or in the meantime, I don't know if any other board members have questions or concerns.
Nope. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Kat, you have a motion?
I have a motion, yes, to approve the special use permit for 371 Schultzville Road.
Yep.
Second.
According to the Dutch County, Department of Health, that I guess since they don't have a record of a 4-bedroom, right? So they're gonna have to remove one of the bedrooms. So it's got to be only 3 bedrooms in there. The building department is in the process of sending that, that notice. They're gonna have to update their septic if they want to make it 4 bedrooms.
Okay, yeah, we only approving it for 3 bedrooms and 6 visitors.
Yeah,
So-
but they still have to remove the 4th bedroom.
So do we need to wait?
No, you can just put it's a condition if you want.
Condition to that, okay,
Yes.
okay, great. So do I have a second? Can I read this, Art?
Second.
Okay,
I'll
yes.
second.
Great. So let me read the resolution. Whereas the Town of Clinton Planning Board has received an application for a special use permit from Alex Newman, authorized to represent Roland Newman Trust for the purpose of utilizing a principal dwelling located at 371 Schultzville Road in the Town of Clinton as a non-hosted short-term rental pursuant to section 250-69.1 of the zoning law. And whereas the subject property is identified as tax parcel number 13-2400-626600989906 and is located in the AR 58 zoning district and agricultural district 20. And whereas the applicants do not propose any alteration, excavation, or construction on the site in connection with the requested permit. And whereas the zoning administrator has inspected the property and in his letter to the applicant dated November 9th, 2021, certified as in compliance with the with the permitting requirements set forth in section 256.9.1 for the use of the parcel as a non-hosted short-term rental. Whereas a septic inspection report was received dated within 90 days of the date of the application, stating that the septic system, including a 1,000-gallon septic tank, was adequately functioning at the time of the inspection, and whereas all applicable fees have been paid. And whereas the applicant has submitted an agricultural data statement given the proximity to the working farm, and whereas the short-term form EAF Part 1 has been received, and whereas the planning board has determined that the proposed action will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment based on the criteria set forth, and qualifies as type 2 action under seeker reuse of residential or commercial structure. And whereas the planning board referred the applicant to the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to General Municipal Law Section 239I and LNM, and has received a response, a matter of local concern. And whereas the planning board conducted a public hearing during its regular meeting on January 18th, 2022, and whereas the planning board has determined that the dwelling shall be used as maximum 3-bedroom unit and number of lodgers allowed shall be 6, and the maximum number of daytime visitors permitted on the property shall be 6. And whereas after review of the application and all the other submissions by the applicants, and the planning board has determined that the application and the dwelling are otherwise in compliance with the requirements of section 256.9.1, and whereas this special use permit shall remain in effect for 1 year from the date of approval by the planning board and shall require annual renewal by the planning board upon timely request by the property owner, no later than the anniversary of such issuance. And whereas the applicant shall ensure that the dwelling unit complies with the requirements of section 256.9.1 and at all times, while it's being utilized as a non-hosted short-term rental, and shall otherwise comply with applicable town, county, and New York state law and regulation governing such use. And whereas the applicant has agreed to remove 1 bedroom and turn the dwelling into a 3-bedroom house as permitted by the Dutchess County Department of Health septic capacity constraints. I'm going to craft it later. Now therefore be resolved that the planning board hereby grants approval of the requested special use permit effective as of the date of this resolution, January 18th, 2022.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion. Okay, all those in favor?
Paul, aye.
Justin, I.
Art, aye.
Mike, aye.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So moved. Okay. Alex, you know there's quite a bit of public sentiment against short-term rentals. So I would be very, very careful and keep a good eye on what goes on there, because next year you'll have to come back for an approval. So keep the neighborhood safe and do the right thing.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Reichard two-lot subdivision plan. Is anybody here for that?
Kurt Schallmeyer here to represent Reichard.
Okay. Can you briefly tell us what you're doing?
Good evening, everyone. Back last August, as before the board when we were in person, presented a sketch plan approval, a sketch plan application for a two-lot subdivision. It's 64 acres over in Browning Road and Rusky Lane. Looking to take a just slightly less than 6-acre parcel off of the 60-acre parcel. And thank you, Arlene, for future lot development. The remaining parcel is to remain undeveloped. We had received a resolution of sketch plan approval back in August, on August 4th, with a few conditions. We've come back, we've satisfied those conditions, and I'm coming back for moving forward with this through the planning board process. We made a joint application for preliminary final, since this is a fairly simple, no jurisdiction subdivision. The conditions were $1,000 escrow bond, a demonstration of suitable places for a well and septic, and driveway access. We've had Pete Staros on the line. He can speak to this. Presented the town with a concept for the driveway and the well and septic locations, and also had a meeting with Todd and Melissa out there last week, and we do have a inspection form from them we have on file with the town now. That's really it, Art.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, so I think all we're doing tonight is we can do our seeker, we can do lead agency and circulate the application and set a public hearing. And I've done a resolution for that, and I would just say, at least my packet it had the sketch plan and it had the driveway detail. It doesn't have a preliminary plat, so that we would need that at some point. Obviously, there are some waivers that we granted on some of the details and features and things like that, but we still need the preliminary plat.
You should have that.
Okay, I don't have it, but
it hasn't changed since August. There's been no change.
Yeah, no, but we need the signature block, the Board of Health notes, all those sort of details. And the copy I have doesn't have any of that. It's not, and it doesn't say it's a preliminary plat. But
I think first you have to clear. It's got to be labeled preliminary.
I can't hear you.
The map needs to be labeled preliminary. Kurt, can you hear me? No, I guess I'm terrible today. Did you hear me?
I don't know who are you talking to. Can you use sign language? We can't. We can't get.
I know.
Not like we're underwater.
Anyway, all right. What I'm trying to say is, Kurt, can you hear me, Kurt?
Go ahead, Arlene.
So the map that you sent needs to be labeled preliminary plat instead of sketch. You got the map you sent, but it's the label that you need to take.
Well, it's the label. No, but it's the signature. It's a signature block. It's the Board of Health permission to file. It's all the other little details that the preliminary plat checklist has, that unless they've been waived. So there's a checklist. If you need any waivers, you can ask for them. We granted waivers on the having to depict the larger lot and the stone walls and stuff like that. We waived all that, but if there's anything else you need a waiver on, you can ask for it. But we do need, if you want us to approve it at the next meeting, which I think we'll be able to, we would need an actual preliminary plat with everything on it that is set forth in the checklist, unless it's been waived or you're asking for a waiver. That we don't have.
No,
It's not a big deal now, but we'll just need it in advance.
We'll get it to you in advance. If we can schedule the public hearing, that would be great.
Yeah, I think we can, based on what you've already submitted. So, Art, do you want me to read the resolution? I sent it around.
Yeah, can you do that? And then we declared lead agency on this?
Well, the resolution will declare lead agency, And it will say we want to set a hearing.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
I'll read it real quick. So, whereas the Town of Clinton Planning Board has received an application for subdivision from Peter Riegert for the purpose of subdividing a vacant 63.85, approximately 63.85 acre parcel located at Rusky Road, or is it Rusky Lane? Anyway, in the town of Clinton, and Browning Road in the town of Clinton into 2 lots consisting of 5.995 acres, lot 1, and 57.895 acres, lot 2, as shown on a map entitled Subdivision of Lands of Peter Riegert, presented by Homewood Engineering PLLC, dated July 17, 2021, known as the map. And whereas the application involves tax parcel 350305, which parcel is located in the AR5 very low density agricultural residential zoning district, and whereas a short form EAF Part 1 has been received, and whereas the planning board previously granted sketch plan approval for this application on August 4, 2021, and whereas the parcel is located within 500 feet of a working farm in an agricultural district, and an agricultural data statement has been submitted, and whereas all applicable fees have been paid, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby declares its intent to serve as lead agency for this unlisted, uncoordinated action pursuant to section 617.62 and 3 of 6 NYC RR 617, and be it further resolved, the planning board hereby directs that the identified involved and interested agencies be as listed below be notified of the board's intent to serve as lead agency, and a copy of the Part 1 EAF, the application form, and the map be delivered to said agencies seeking their consent to the planning board acting as lead agency, involved agencies, none, interested agencies, Town of Clinton CAC, Town of Clinton Highway Department, and West Clinton Fire District. Be it further resolved, the planning board will hold a public hearing on this application at its meeting scheduled for February blank 2022. And be it further resolved, the applicant will be required to submit a preliminary plat conforming to the submission requirements set forth in the Town of Clinton subdivision and lot line adjustment regulations, Part 2, submission requirements checklist for preliminary plats, subject to the following waivers previously granted. Item 1, subparts G, H, and I, property line survey for lot 2 and mapping of existing wetlands, significant features, and soils on both lots. Item 2, information on proposed site development, except for item 2B, lot layout is required for lot 1, and item 3. End of resolution.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second,
Is that February 1st?
I didn't put a date. What's the date you want?
First, February 1st.
Okay,
February 1. Okay.
Is that doable for you? I mean,
Is that
otherwise
good
it's the
for you?
2nd February. Second
That'll
week.
work.
Does or doesn't? Does?
That'll work.
You think you'll be able to get me all the
What?
flat?
We'll get you whatever you need, Arlene. We'll talk to you when we can
okay.
talk on the phone.
Discussion, hold on. Discussion. All in favor?
aye.
Word aye.
All aye.
Cat eye.
Okay, so moved. Okay, next item on the agenda.
Thank you, everybody.
Commercial demolition permit. Do we have anybody here for that?
Yes, Jacob Angel here, representing Halton Construction.
Okay. Can you briefly tell us what you're doing?
Yes, we have a client on 269 Nine Partners Road, in the town of Clinton that we are working for. We're bringing forward tonight 2 applications, one of which is I'll review with you, but the one mainly that we're seeking your approval on is the barn. In the beginning of last year, we started a renovation on the guest house. And one thing led to the next. And We actually had put an addition onto the back side of it, but as we started doing the renovation, it became more and more clear that different aspects of the house had to be redone, and we started that process, but then it kind of got more and more in depth, and we ended up having to replace the foundation on this house. So coming before you tonight on the guest house is kind of more of a formality and just making you aware that we had to take down the building in its entirety. The new building that we're putting up is exactly the same footprint as the renovation that we actually had a building permit for. So it's more of just putting in a new foundation for that building, which we can go in depth if anyone has any questions on. But the main reason for coming for you tonight is the barn, which is visible from the road. Our client would like to take down the building due to some structural, some safety issues. It's in need of a rehab, but very much would like to assemble the building in the same historic look, trying to salvage all the materials as best as possible, trying to reuse the beams. So the barn, the ultimate goal is to basically have it look very similar to the pictures that are shown on the proposal, and basically just to put a whole new foundation in it and make it structurally sound, so that the building can be around for years to come.
Thank you. Justin?
Sure, I have a few questions. Is the lot size 61 acres? Because there was 61 somewhere and I saw 15.1 somewhere else. I think it's 61.
I believe the whole property that they own is 64 acres.
64, did you say?
Yes. Yep. I can look that up. But I'm almost positive that it's definitely more than the 15. I think there is maybe two different parcel numbers to it, but the overall acreage is definitely towards the 64 acreage.
Okay, I'm just, the application said 61. There was something on parcel access that said 15.1 in the text, but the picture looks like either 61 or 64. I can't see it because it's blurry, but if you could just figure out what that is, I'm going to need it for the resolution.
64.1.
64.1. Okay, thank you. So the guest, so let's start with I guess the first application I'll just say is the guest house. So that was demolished in what month?
That was done probably like in July, but it was part of the it was in the midst of the renovation that it started to be having to taken down piece by piece.
Yeah, so I guess my question for the board is, if the old guest house was 18,893 square feet, and it looks like the renovation permit would have made the structure 2,246 square feet. And so did you have did you have a permit and a variance to build that large of an accessory dwelling? And so that's part one of my question. And part two is that still valid if it's no longer a renovation and it's now a demolition and a rebuild? And that's to the board. I don't know the answer. But maybe, sorry, Jacob, did you have a permit with a variance to build, I guess, an accessory dwelling that large? Is that the old permit that you're talking about?
What I can tell you is that we got the renovation permit, for the drawings that are attached to this report. And then because of the foundation and structural issues, we had to replace the foundation. there really wasn't too much of a choice there. So that's already, the foundation is actually already in the ground, and they're already starting to build, frame out the renovation part of the building, like as planned. Is that helping?
What year was it built? The guest cottage?
The guest cottage, they think was from the 70s pre-zoning.
I have to look at it. It predates the zoning. Do you have the parcel number, Justin, that you could give it to me offhand? I have so many screens going on my computer.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat for you. Right, because what I'm thinking is that if there wasn't a variance application before, there should have been, because they're expanding on something that's out of compliance. And so I don't know that, I don't know the answer. I don't know if they get to keep the permit that might have missed the request for a variance, or if now that we've spotted it, they need to get a variance.
Hold on. We have a CO for one house. What year was the other house? The main house?
1750.
1750. All right.
It
so-
says on parcel access.
All right. So it looks, I'm looking at the parcel history of the property, and we have in 1988 we issued a CO for one family dwelling. So it looks like the other one predates the zoning. I don't know whether that has a permit, but there was a CO for the other house. Yeah, the 1973. The CO was issued in 1988, even though it was permitted in 1973. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I guess that doesn't answer my threshold question of whether they need a variance to expand the square footage of the guest house. I think the answer is yes.
Well, it doesn't look like it was given a special permit, if that is the question. I don't know. I have to look. If that was in 1988, but it looks like the main house was built predates the zoning, the guest cottage, or the other house was built in 1973, and the CO was issued in 1988. Whether there was special permit or variance, I don't know. It doesn't say on my record. But I have to dig.
But there was no variance in 2020 when they said we want to redo and expand the footprint of the guest house, right?
No. What happened is they just filed the building permit to renovate. It's the same number of bedrooms, adding one bathroom, making this now 3 bedroom and 3 bathroom. That's just a renovation. No.
But according to them, their building permit included a request for an additional 300 square feet when we're talking about a limit of 1,000 square feet for accessory dwellings. And this would be going from 1,900 to 2,200.
That's correct. It's a very large parcel, and there's 2 addresses on the property. So 253-269. I mean, though it's considered one parcel. Good question. I have to really dig into it to really get the history of it.
I guess what I'm saying is maybe we should set aside the application for the guest house, because I don't think we have complete information, right? If they used to be 2 houses and 2 separate parcels, but then they've been combined, right? Now it's going to fall under accessory dwelling, and they've got to comply with that and get a variance, which they didn't do the first time around. So, I don't want to make too much of a amount out of this. Like, they've already demolished it. They're starting to build it, but I don't think they're permitted to build it in a larger footprint for an accessory dwelling on a single lot. But I don't think there's enough information in the packet that we have to figure that out on this call.
Yes, what happened is, instead of renovating, they demolished it. So that's why they're here. They're in violation of removing the building instead of renovating.
I understand, but even if they renovated it and that, they were not allowed to add 300 square feet to it.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
we had a
can
build,
just-
we have a building permit for that.
For the renovation, not for the
With the addition, we have the building permit for.
For the addition?
Yep,
Hold on.
that was the one I filed back in, let me give you the exact date.
I mean, to frame it for the board, right, while Arlene's looking, it's one of two things, either
This
that
is
the
what I
building
have.
permit
Can you see
was
it?
issued in, yeah,
This is the history. See, the demolition that we issued for the selective interior of the rear building. I don't see any addition in here.
renovation of pre-existing guest house, right? That's what they're talking about.
That's
So
it.
that-
If you look at those plans, that had the addition on it as well as in part of the renovation.
Well, the building permit that was issued to you, which is the renovation, it didn't say anything about addition.
If you look at the plans on that, you'll see that there is a small little addition on squaring up the corners. On the back corner of the house.
I don't know, it's the building inspector question and the Z, they're the one who reviewed the plans, so the addition should have been, put it in with the site plan and everything to make sure that you're in the setback.
It's on it would be on the site plan of those plans. It's all on there on that set that was presented.
I don't have that on screen, it's gonna be in the box. Not gonna be able to share that.
Justin?
Yeah.
I think there's enough question here that we should put this aside and let the building inspector and the CEO go over what they did. Because if it is an addition and it wasn't approved, then they have to give us an application for an addition. Am I correct or?
Yeah, you're right. I think they need to re-review it, make sure that they're aware of the addition. They can either say that they made a mistake or it was new information or it wasn't completed properly. They should come back to us and tell us if they need a variance or not, or if they're permitted to still build, given whatever building permit they issued back in, April of 2020. But we don't have enough information to move forward right now.
Okay, how does the rest of the board feel about that?
What about the barn, Justin? Can you give a demolition for the?
How does the rest of the board feel about that?
I agree that we need to clarify it.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Paul, Kat, Mike,
No, I agree. I think we need clarification first.
thank you. Kat,
I agree.
and last but not least, Paul.
Yep, I agree.
Okay,
But wait a minute, there's.
why don't we put this
demolition.
aside?
There's the barn. Arlene's asking about the barn, I think.
Well, we can do the barn. The barn is,
Do
I
the
think,
barn.
easy. Is the barn going to be the same? Are there plans for the footprint of the barn? Does it matter?
Is that
This is
the
to you,
question
Jacob.
for me?
All we're doing is the barn.
Yeah,
All the application for is demoing the barn with the intent that the barn is going to be put up in the same footprint with the same historic look. The goal is within the next year.
yeah. And I looked and I didn't find anything on the historic resource survey of 1986 for Dutchess County. And Jacob, can you just confirm you're not aware of anything, that's the structure has any national, state, or local designation of significance?
Yes, nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. You want to go ahead, Justin, with a?
Yeah, I'm going to do it a little bit on the fly, but be it resolved that the Town of Clinton Planning Board recommends approval of the demolition permit application dated January 11th, 2022, submitted by Jacob Angel of Halton Construction for the purpose of demolishing an accessory barn structure located on a 64.1 acre parcel at 253 to 269 Nine Partners Road, Clinton Corners, tax grid number ending 930822, and refers this matter to the building inspector for review and approval of the demolition plan. The application pertains to an accessory structure that is a livestock barn that appears to be from the 1800s. The applicant states that the structure has structural support problems, both framing and foundation wise. The structure does not appear on the Historic Resource Survey of 1986 located on Dutchess County Parcel Access, and the applicant states that the structure does not have any national, state, or local designation of significance, nor are there any for the parcel on which it is located. The applicant seeks to remove windows and siding of the barn by hand, disassemble the posts and beams, and save materials for future use. Following the demolition, the applicant intends to excavate and pour a new foundation and reassemble the barn to preserve the look of a building and use it for storage and as a garage. The planned accessory structure will be, is expected to be on the same footprint as the current barn. Pictures of the barn were submitted confirming the condition of the structure. A completed environmental assessment form has been submitted. The planning board has reviewed the application with regard to the requirements of section 250-93 of the zoning law and determined that the buildings have no historic value. All appropriate fees have been paid. And Arlene, do we have a consent to act form on file?
Yes.
And a consent to act form has been received from the property owner. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Town of Clinton Planning Board recommends approval of the demolition permit application and refers the matter to the building inspector for further action consistent with the town zoning law, period.
Second,
Discussion? All in favor? Art, aye.
Jack, aye.
Cat eye.
All right.
Okay, so moved.
Very good, thank you. And
You're
and I'll
welcome.
touch base, Arlene, I'll touch base with you and stop by and talk with Mike or me at the site.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you, guys.
Okay. Before we move on to the next item, because Kat and I have to leave the meeting. One, Arlene, I've gotten about 6 phone calls from people who say the audio is kind of screwed up. So
Yeah, all right, I already fixed it. I resent them the live, for the YouTube, for the live streaming, so it's working now, so they could just
okay, good.
sign in again.
Good, thank you. And the other thing is, I think this is just my own opinion, and the board can act in any way they see fit. But I think we have been put in a very untenable position with the short-term rentals. I kind of envisioned this was going to happen. And I think we need to have a discussion with the town board and the information that we get on people who are not coming in for permits. You know, we've seen this numerous times now, comments from the public. So I'm going to attend the next town board meeting and just kind of let them know. And if anybody else feels the same way, let me know and we'll go together and come up with a plan or whatever. So
Yep.
that's what I have to say on that.
I'll go with you.
I think you're right.
We'll be there with you. Art.
Okay,
Can I get 2 minutes bathroom break?
okay. The next item on the agenda is Cornerstone, and Kat and I have to leave the meeting. So Paul, you're in charge, and since that's the last thing on the agenda, you might as well close out the meeting also.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Good
Thank you,
job.
Barbara.
Oh, bathroom break, please.
I'm sorry, bathroom break?
Okay, how do I do this? Just leave?
2 minutes.
I have the authority to deny somebody a bathroom break.
Oh, come on. We could have a 2-minute. Come on, we do this all the time.
All right, 2-minute bathroom break. I hereby decree a 2-minute bathroom break.
It's
Hey,
8:40.
Paul, I was able to get in a different way.
Oh, good. Okay. We'll go in. We just need a minute and we'll get going.
Yeah, that's okay. We certainly don't want to deny anybody the privilege of going to the bathroom.
That's right.
It would make the meeting shorter if we did.
It really would. That was my thought. That was my thought process, but.
I am back.
Right. So let's move on. The next matter on the agenda is Cornerstone. It's on for discussion. Arlene, do we have the people we need from Cornerstone?
I'm here, Warren Raplansky. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you. Are you hooked into the Zoom or just
You
on
want
the
me to
phone?
start the video? Can you see me?
There we go.
Yeah, okay.
Hello, Warren. Anybody else from Warren? Is anybody else going to be?
I thought we were supposed to have Mike McCormick, Michael Purnell, and Jeffrey Owenfather there. I don't know if they're here.
Michael.
I'm in. Jeff is here. Mike McCormick's here.
Michael Purnell is here.
Mike.
Paul.
Okay, so we have, so everybody from Cornerstone is here, and we have Pete Sotero, right, Pete? Town engineer.
Yes, that's me. That's right.
Shane, are you on?
I'm here. Hi, Paul.
Shane Egan, the town attorney. So for everybody listening, we have the representatives from Cornerstone, and we have the town engineer and the town attorney who may very well comment during the discussion. And you have the remaining board members on. And before we start with the substantive discussion, if you'll all indulge me, just a couple of things. I have a personal disclosure that I'll make, and then I just want to make a couple of comments, and we'll get into the substance. And the disclosure, which I've made before, just make it again, is that Warren Raplansky, who's the lawyer for Cornerstone, has done legal work for our family over the years, including some real estate transactions, estate planning, and there was a matter before the planning board with the latest representation, the last representation being, I think, in 2007, and nothing that I can think of since then, nothing currently. And none of that, of course, had anything to do with Cornerstone or the current application. So just wanted to make that disclosure. And I think we thought in our internal discussions that it made sense to level set on where we are and how we got here. So if you just give me a minute or two, I'm going to give an overview from my perspective of what we're trying to do, and then I'll open it up to the board members if anybody else has questions or comments, and then Cornerstone, you can all comment as well. So we're here, Cornerstone has applied for a special use permit and site plan approval. It's important for anybody listening to understand that Cornerstone, in making the application, is not asking for permission to build anything or add anything to the current facility. This is an application in effect for retroactive approval of a capacity expansion that was done some years ago, perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. And as I understand it, it was an expansion from about 66 beds or patient capacity to about 99 beds. And this was done within the existing, I think, main building of Cornerstone, the residential building. So it was kind of an interior renovation. They didn't add any buildings or add any footprint to any buildings. So people may be asking, well, why are we considering this now? So the procedural history, briefly, as I understand it, is that in August of 2021, the town zoning administrator ruled that Cornerstone was in violation for undertaking that capacity increase years ago without the appropriate approvals from the town. And he then directed that Cornerstone make an application in order to cure that violation, make an application for special use permit and site plan review to the planning board. And in the course of doing that, he ruled that Cornerstone is an alternate care facility. And if you're into these kind of things, alternate care facilities are governed by section 250-31 of the zoning law of the town. And that says in pertinent part that if a facility is going to increase its capacity, it needs to come back to the planning board and basically have for a new special use permit and a re-examination of its site plan. And the site plan is a map essentially of the piece of land with all the buildings and parking lots and lighting and everything else that's on it. That's what a site plan is, basically a big plan. After that, the zoning administrator in December issued another letter to the planning board, directing the planning board to consider that this is a special permit application requiring full re-examination of the site plan, and keeping in mind that this is an alternate care facility, but it's also a pre-existing non-conforming use governed by section 250-84 of the zoning law. And I think what he was saying there was that the capacity at 66 was pre-existing non-conforming, and the expansion was in addition to that, and so needed the approval of the planning board. And the wrinkle here, by the way, in terms of the review that we're doing, is there is no, as far as we know, any kind of site plan on file for Cornerstone with the town or a special use permit that was previously issued. So we're really doing this, from scratch with this process. To my knowledge, no one has appealed those rulings from the zoning administrator. He's the gatekeeper for this board. He is the primary arbiter of zoning decisions in the town. No one has challenged those rulings, and the board is acting in accordance with them. Having said that, I would note that last week, the board received a letter from a lawyer representing some concerned neighbors, arguing that this application process should be stopped, and making two principal points. One, that Cornerstone's in violation, and that accordingly the board can't issue a special use permit if they're in violation. And two, that the capacity increase is an impermissible increase in a pre-existing non-conforming use, and that if they're seeking a capacity increase, they need a use variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm sure we'll be discussing those points, and that they will be raised at the public hearing. So what have we done so far? What has the board done so far? We've had one meeting. It was a discussion meeting in December, I believe. And the board decided to refer the application to the town attorney and town planner for comments, which was done. We have now a comment letter from them, which will be discussed tonight. And we'll be discussing that with Cornerstone and the town consultants. And we will decide on next steps moving forward with the application. I'll just remind people, this is not a public hearing. We will not be taking comments from the public. The board will schedule a public hearing in the future, and adjacent property owners will get notified by mail. Everybody else can, the town website will have notice of the hearing, and it'll be in other places as well. So there'll be notice of that. So let me stop there just to see if any board members have any questions, comments, concerns on the general overview before we get into the substance. If anybody has a comment, feel free to speak now. Hearing nobody. Cornerstone, Warren and Cornerstone, do you have any comments on this sort of general overview?
No, it seems pretty accurate. I just want to indicate that you did in your overview indicated that there were some interior renovations. I don't think there was any interior renovations. I think what happened was the existing bed capacity and lodging within the facility just accommodated additional patients or from Cornerstone. That there was no renovation. I also a little surprised. I wasn't aware of this letter that you referred to by the attorney. I'm certainly going to request that a copy of that be sent to me. So I can't comment on that because I haven't seen that. But the overview in all other respects seems pretty accurate.
Right, appreciate it. Okay. So in terms of the sort of nuts and bolts here, in terms of discussing what the board needs to proceed, Pete, do you? I mean, Warren, you've seen Pete's letter. Pete, did you want to
Sure.
kind of run through that?
Yeah.
Would that be helpful? I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, sort of. So I think the first thing that we want to talk about is just confirm, because there appears to have been some confusion, likely on our part, that there is no new construction of any kind proposed at this point in time. That it is basically a validation of the current site plan as it exists per the survey that was provided, and to validate the bed count that currently exists today. And I'd like for Warren to just confirm that, assuming that that's accurate.
Yes, that's accurate. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there was confusion that you expressed in your comment letter, and that's why I was a little exercised over it, because it's I thought we had made it clear to the planning board that the application that had been made, or the discussion about an application that was made a couple of years ago about a possible expansion of the facility structure itself, was never followed through. It's not pending before the board, and we're not seeking any such approvals now.
Okay, got it. Good. So the only potential possible change is if there could be landscaping that could be added pending any public hearing comments, but that's something that we can deal with later on. So let me just go through a few things. So the first thing that we did is I had Mark Long from our office go out to the site, and he met Michael Purnell out there, because the first thing was to take the survey that was prepared by Chazen's office and basically go out and take a look. Is what's shown on the site plan generally what's on the site, and the result of Mark's inspection that was that was included with our memo was that, yes, it is, except for I think there was maybe a buried propane tank that wasn't shown on, the survey, and that was probably installed after the survey was done, but that can be updated. So in order to validate the site plan and get an approved site plan on file with the town, so that in the event in the future, if there's any improvements proposed for the facility, that we have a baseline, to work from, and we can move on, from there. So in order to do that, and for the planning board to pass a resolution approving that, and for the chairman to sign a copy of the plan, we need to have a site plan. And the survey certainly serves as a majority of the site plan, but it needs to be made into a site plan that conforms with section 250-96 of the code, which is site plans. It goes, it talks about the information that needs to be shown on the plan. Some of that information could probably be requested as a waiver because it may not be applicable. But the site plan should have a basic bulk zoning, table with the number of parking like spaces, the setbacks. It's just a basic zoning table that you see on all, site plans. So if we have a site plan that conforms to that section of the code, and then we also we talked about on a call we had on Monday with Paul Thomas, myself, Shane, and Jack, that to dot the I's and cross the T's, that we should probably have a long form EAF that would have attached to it a copy of the Dutchess County, the New York State DEC resource like mapper that indicates any of the potential environmental issues that may exist in the project-like area. Now, it will probably turn up, because of its proximity to the lake. It'll probably turn up the potential presence of landings like turtles, some other things. At this point, we are not looking for Cornerstone to go out and do any environmental like studies. The site is as it is, but to just have that resource mapper page attached to the EAF, so that in the future, if a project does come before the board, again, we have a baseline that we can work from. The other thing, and what I think I should do is, after this meeting, I should issue a revised letter, memo, clarifying the things that we're talking about like tonight, so that the applicants have a path moving forward. Much of the stuff that was in our prior memo will probably be coming out. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that to close, the seeker loop, there was an increase in the number of beds from the 66 to, 88 or something in that like range, whatever it is. So, I assume that there's no issues with Cornerstone's water supply permit that's administered through the Dutchess County Health Department, and also their DEC speedies permit for their sewage disposal. But we did ask that an engineer just look at it and, evaluate whether the increase in beds and the increase in flow to the sewage disposal system is still within the permitted capacity of their original permit. And I said in my memo that I think that can simply be done by there should be monthly water reports or quarterly water reports that are submitted to the health department that documents, the flows for the particular period. They can equate that to a gallons per day flow, and then just see what the Speedies permit says, and hopefully it's within the limits of the Speedies permit. I hate to use the word assume, but I assume that it will be, because I am sure that the Dutchess County Health Department, in reviewing the monthly or the quarterly reports, whatever they are that are submitted, that's something that their office would be checking. So it should be a fairly easy thing to provide. So we're not looking for anything like crazy, but just like validation that the water and sewer permits are still valid with the increase in beds. So generally, I think that's it from my standpoint. I'll issue a new memo in the next few days. I had a call with Warren after our meeting, after our conference call, after our internal conference call we had with Paul and Shane and Jack. And I know there's some urgency on the applicant's part for several reasons, and that I said that whoever is the consultant working for the applicant, that I would be glad to work with them to make sure that what was submitted to the town the next time around, that we've taken a look at it to make sure that it's complete, so that we can keep going with the process, which the process does have to include a referral to the county planning department for a 239M referral, and then also the scheduling of a public hearing. So in order to try to help them out and meet their time constraints, I said that I would work together with their consultant, whoever that ends up to be. So I think that's about it, for me. I'd be glad to answer any questions, or I don't know, if Shane wants to add anything, but I'll shut up now. So thank you.
Warren, do you?
God, don't tell me I left everybody speechless.
Yeah, I think there.
Well said, Pete. Covered everything. Yeah.
I think you did, Pete. Is it okay if I just respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. I reviewed Pete's memo. I'm looking forward to a revised memo, with the updated information on what we're actually applying for. I just want to let the board know, and Pete know, that when we submitted this Chazen survey, we weren't trying to avoid providing a site plan. If you look at that survey, it's much more than just a survey. It's very close to being a site plan itself. It has the wetlands, it has the setback requirements, it refers to the zoning. It really is as close as you can possibly come to being a site plan without actually stating it. So having said that, we have no problem with, when I say we, Cornerstone has no problem with retaining the services of an engineer to convert that survey into a site plan. And we would expect that our engineering consultant would be able to speak with Pete and decide what additionally needs to be put into the site plan and what kind of waivers we need and can have, so that we have a complete site plan ultimately for this facility as it presently exists for the planning board to approve. The good news is that it looks like we have. Are you all right? Bless you. We have retained, I'll be speaking with my clients tomorrow, but I believe that an engineer, Tom Cummings, who I think is known to Pete, has worked with Pete before, is going to be on board. And he has indicated to me tonight in an email that he can in fact provide the evaluation of the SDS and the water supply and review all of our existing permits and supply the confirmation that Pete and CPL are looking for in that regard. And additionally, it's my understanding he's going to be able to take the survey and take a CAD copy of that from Chazen and convert that into a site plan, and is willing to prepare that for us. And again, Tom can work directly with Pete. We're hoping in a very short time period to decide what needs to be put into the site plan. So that's the only other, if that's okay with the planning board. I'm assuming that's acceptable. We would like to expedite this if we possibly can. We don't want to short circuit your review, but we would like to move forward as quickly as possible for internal reasons. One of the issues I wanted to discuss, and while we have the attorney here, and I'm assuming it's raised by this letter that I haven't seen a copy of, is the issue of the notice of violation. I know that's not within the province of the planning board to deal with that issue, but the notice of violation that was issued by Mr. Fenton had indicated that the remedial measure that he wanted Cornerstone to take was to actually make this application. He did not specify that or indicate that the application had to be approved in order to cure the violation, only that an application be made to the planning board, which we have done. So we would like to see if we can get the notice of violation rescinded. It's my understanding that there is now a new zoning enforcement officer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when I tried to reach out to him, I was told that he was out with COVID. Is he back in business now?
I believe he is. Yes.
Okay. So maybe that's something I could sit down with the new code enforcement officer, maybe Shane, and see if we could come to terms on possibly lifting the notice of violation without prejudice, with the understanding that the Cornerstone will continue to move forward with its application in good faith. Obviously, if Cornerstone fails to do that, the notice of violation could be reissued. I know planning board doesn't have any jurisdiction over that, but I just wanted to mention that while I had Shane here. Do you think, Shane, it's possible that you and I could meet with the zoning enforcement officer to discuss that? Or
We can discuss it, Warren. I mean, what I know what John Fenton's position was on it and how he handled, previous matters. Verizon Wireless was another case similar to this, where, a special permit should have been applied 4 years ago and a violation notice was issued. It was kind of a catch-22 where the letter, in order to cure the violation, the application had to be made. And what happened there was, the planning board and the zoning administrator worked together as the application progressed, and eventually, when they got to the point, when the planning board got to the point where they could issue the site plan and the special permit, at that point, then the zoning administrator withdrew the notice of violation. So I'm not sure what the new zoning officer's position will be on that, but we can certainly have that meeting. But that's how it's been handled in the past.
Right. And as you can see, I haven't seen this letter, but I'm assuming the letter is going to try to put the Cornerstone in a catch-22 situation where I would not be surprised if it said something to the effect that because there's a violation, we can't make the application to the planning board, which leaves us in a untenable situation.
The way I read the letter is that, he's state enforcement, he's directed you to make the application, which you've made, and you made it before the December deadline, and therefore he's not taking any enforcement action. There's been no enforcement made. So that's how I read it.
Right. Well, maybe we could discuss that with the new zoning enforcement officer. I'll try to set up something if you don't mind. I think there was, I don't know how quickly we can handle this, but I've had some issues when I've submitted things to Arlene, who's advised me that everything has to be submitted to the planning board 2 weeks in advance. It's really very difficult for us to do that. And I'm wondering if the planning board could relax that standard so that we could move forward with this application, but not have the bar that everything has to be submitted 2 weeks in advance. It's very difficult to comply with that and keep on some sort of schedule.
Well, I think the problem is when we relax that, we end up getting everything an hour before the meeting.
No, I don't mean that.
And I'm not suggesting you're going to do
Yeah.
that. But I just don't understand why we. My view on this, and I'll defer to the board, is, I like your idea of. I like the idea of the consultants working together to come up with a submission that meets, Pete's requirements, and that and that Pete can certify to us is ready to go, without having another meeting where we have to go through all of the sort of granular details. And I think, what we would like is, to have a submission that is largely complete. Maybe there are some details that need to be filled in, but largely complete before we put this back on the agenda. If there's some item that's missing and it's 2 weeks, the 2-week deadline is there, and if there's 1 or 2 discrete items missing, we're not going to hold you to that. But I think at a minimum, we need the site plan, the long form EAF. And I don't know, Pete, if there's anything else that's sort of fundamental to this process, and maybe a list of waivers. And we could put you on the agenda, but my view is, I don't like to put people on the agenda only to be told the application's incomplete, or there was confusion about what was required or anything like that. I mean, I'm trying to avoid that.
Right.
I know everybody wants to get on the agenda, as a default, but I don't know whether we're talking about I'm assuming that we won't have a site plan in reasonable shape before the next meeting. So we're kind of looking at the meeting after that. I don't know. I have no idea how long these things take, but.
Yeah, I mean, the next meeting's only two weeks away.
You're not gonna,
So we've already violated the 2-week rule.
Yeah. We design it that way. It's like reservations in a restaurant. You don't want to get people at 7:30. So
I think the best thing to do is for Pete, and for assuming that we line things up with Tom Cummings, to talk, and we'll get a sense of how long it'll take for Pete to get his new letter out, and for us to get the documents to the planning board. But I probably would tend to agree that the February 1st meeting is a little too ambitious, but we would like to shoot for the next meeting.
Well, it's not February the 1st, right? It's February, is it February
what
1st
is it?
or the 8th?
February 1st is the next.
What's the date?
I think
February.
it's an early one. It's early. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Warren, the calendar is against you for the next meeting.
I know. Well,
sometimes you get an extra week and sometimes you don't, but
no, I mean, I understand that. So we have a lot of stuff to do between now and then, but we would like to shoot for, what is it, the 15th or the 14th is your next meeting?
The 15th.
15th, yeah, we would like to shoot for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the timing is up to you, and the quicker you get the the documents and everything to us, the quicker we can put you on the agenda. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have a memo. I mean, well, I'll have something out. What's tomorrow? Wednesday. I'll have something out on Thursday. It's not a big deal.
That would be great, Pete. And then assuming that Tom Cummings is going to be on board, should I have him contact you directly? And
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the meantime, Shane and I will try to work with the new zoning enforcement officer to see if we can resolve that issue.
Okay. Anybody on the board have anything at this point? I think we're probably pretty close to done at this point.
One little thing maybe. When the board members had a site visit a week or so ago, and Mr. Purnell told us he was going to be putting in vegetation as a screen between the ball courts and the neighbors, some kind of green giant arborvitae. And I noticed that your letter of Friday, Mr. Raplansky, said you weren't doing that. I'm not sure I understand what the current status of that proposal is.
Yeah.
I frankly think it would be very helpful to have that vegetation.
Yeah, let me clarify that. The question from Pete was if we're going to put screening in, it should be shown on the site plan, and I agree that that's the case. We were offering putting the screening in as a mitigation measure to meet some of the visual impact objections of the neighbors. We can certainly add that to the site plan, and there may be other mitigation measures that we could add. But I was hoping to wait to see what response we get from the neighbors in terms of what they're looking for before we start making those changes. Now that I see a letter has come in from those same neighbors' attorney, I have a feeling that we're going to war on this. So it may be that those discussions may be off the table, but we will certainly amend the site plan to add the Aphrodite screening as a mitigation measure, and which would have to be approved by the planning board.
Yeah, the only thing with that is, and again, this is like an engineer speaking, but it's my understanding that the arborvitae are very inviting to deer, I think. So somebody just needs, to look that over. I mean, I could talk to one of, our landscape architects in our Rochester office, but it's not my area of expertise, but I do know. Yeah. So.
Okay, that was just a suggestion. I mean, if there's another means of screening, that's fine with us. It's not a problem.
Yeah. Just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
Can I just?
I wanted to show my landscape architect talents.
Just with respect to the neighbors, has there been any effort to try to mediate some of these issues more and to try to resolve some of these disputes?
Well, let me be forthright and honest about that. I did reach out to the neighbors through somebody I knew who was one of the neighbors and suggested that we have a meeting prior to the conduct of a public hearing. And I've done this before, in other applications, so that we could find out exactly what concerns they have to see if we can come to terms and meet those concerns. I have not been able to set that meeting up with their attorney, and I suspect that's the same attorney who's now written you a letter that has suggested, I guess, that the application should not be considered by the board. I would point out that one of the clients of that attorney is one of the board members who recused herself. And I think that's a violation of the recusal laws in the state of New York. It's a serious, to me, it seems like a serious violation of that. But if that's the approach that the neighbors are going to take, we're certainly willing to sit down with them and try to come to terms in a non-adversarial manner prior to the public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we, Jock's point, when we did the site visit, there, Mike mentioned some noise issues that have been raised over the years. And some of them were kind of temporary and some of them may be more, more consistent, but the board's going to just we're going to want to be able to try to resolve all of that in a way that makes sense for everybody. So the more that everybody can work together, the better. So anyway.
We have tried, but it doesn't look like I've contacted the attorney and asked when we could meet, and he has not gotten back to me. So I'm not sure that type of meeting is going to happen, unfortunately.
All right. Thanks for the info. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. So we don't have another date yet, and we'll wait for the next submission and for comments from Pete, and we'll move on from there, I guess. Those will be our next steps. And thank you all very much for the time, and we'll see you at whenever the next meeting is.
Thank you also. Keep well.
You too.
Yep.
The board could stay on for another minute or two. I'd appreciate it.
All right, good night.
Good night.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Shane.
Yes, good night, guys. Thank you.
Good night, Shane.
Good night.
So we're running a little late. I didn't have anything else in specific. I don't know if Elliot is still on. I don't know, Elliot, if you have a report or anything specific you want to talk about, or that's the end of our agenda.
In a couple of things quickly here, since the hour is late. It appears that we're going to be starting I think I mentioned last week, the zoning revision workshops. And it appears that the schedule is going to be the first and third Wednesday of the month, beginning the first Wednesday in February, which I believe is what, the 2nd?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the 2nd would be the next meeting. At the moment, the idea is to do them in person, but of course that could change at any time, in which case it might have to go to some kind of a Zoom or YouTube hookup or something of that sort. But the idea at the moment, at least, is to do them as in-person meetings beginning on the 2nd of February. I'll also mention, just as a sort of as a PS to a previous conversation about the short-term rentals, I did have a conversation with Katerina, who raised the same suggestion about having a list available for the public of authorized short-term rentals, perhaps posted on the town website or somewhere where it would be easily accessible so people would know the short-term rentals that have been approved in the town. And I've spoken about, actually, I spoke with Michael Whitten about this. I think Michael's now off the call, but he was on it up until a minute ago. We've talked about the possibility of doing this and are going to explore how that would be done. I don't know if there are legal issues, if there are privacy issues. Presumably, this is all public record, so there shouldn't be privacy issues involved. The idea would simply be to list addresses. You don't even have to necessarily list names, but at least to list addresses. Anyway, so that's two of the people who spoke before had mentioned that as a possibility, whether that was a possibility.
Can I just
go ahead,
Elliot,
Jeff. Yeah, go.
I just float a concern on that
yes,
you're publishing a list of addresses. Are you flagging to people who do not intend well that this is a house that is not occupied by an owner and is rife for crime? Like I understand it might make sense to say, oh, can I go to the town supervisor's office and check a list or request a list, but putting it out on the internet
That's
seems
a good
a little
thought. Yeah,
dangerous.
I guess that could be an issue. But perhaps just putting a note on the website, on the homepage saying a list is available for whatever, but requiring people to do it in confidence rather than having it up there in public. So that's a very good point. I hadn't thought of that. There may be other issues involved too, insofar as privacy is concerned, about whether and how much information is acceptable to be made public, even though technically it is a matter of public record. But your point is a very good one. I don't know, Jack, do you have any thoughts about the privacy issue?
Well, these are people who are advertising.
Well, that's it, yeah.
Their facilities for sale, for rent. So
Right.
they have chosen to make it public. So I'm not too concerned about the privacy. I think Justin's point about security is much more relevant. And I don't see where it's too much of an infringement to ask somebody to stop by the supervisor's office or whatever if they want to look at it. But I don't see you can claim privacy for something you're advertising to rent.
But
I agree. You've got your
we-
pictures on the internet. It doesn't have your address on the internet, right? It has a picture of your house. So I think you lose the privacy, but we don't want to be the ones providing addresses.
I think that's a valid point.
Don't the addresses show up when you go to Airbnb? They're not specific.
If you actually rent the place, yeah.
Yeah, not until you pay for it.
Okay. So the addresses are not out there.
It shows you like a big circle, right? That, it's in Clinton or Northwest Clinton.
Okay.
You just, I mean, the only thing is you have to be able to go in and verify whether it's approved or not, because we have a whole complaint process, right, for approved Airbnbs where you're supposed to be able to complain to somebody if there's too much noise or whatever. So it seems like the solution is, if Pat is concerned, she can go into the office and say, is 123 Schultzville Road an approved Airbnb or not?
Or just complain, right? You're claiming that it's an Airbnb and it's either registered or not registered.
Exactly.
One complaint. And two is whether it complies with, all the.
Either yes, it's approved and they're making too much noise, or no, it's not approved at all and they're using, either way, it's, So there's, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, that's one way of trying to close the gap, certainly, in terms of, I mean, there is a significant gap between the number of STRs that are out there and the number of applications that you guys have actually seen. I suspect it's only maybe 10%, 20% of what's out there have actually come to you. And that gap needs to be closed, clearly. And hopefully it will over time. This may be one way of doing that.
I mean, didn't the town hire professionals to do this for us?
Yes.
That was months and months ago.
Yes. Your point being, yes, actually there is.
I hope we didn't pay them in full in advance. That's all.
There is apparently, my understanding is you can actually rent or get a software package that is available to help you do this. And I believe the county was supposed to supply, actually Arlene may know more about this. The county was supposed to supply essentially a database of all these properties that are out there.
I have it.
And we were supposed to chase after them, and I'm not sure whether that actually happened or not. Arlene would know better.
Yeah, I have it. The thing is, they're supposed to be sending it, the letters. But the last time I checked, they only sent like 6 or 9 or something. So we just need enforcement. We need to start sending those letters out.
Yeah.
We're not the ones sending it. It's them.
So I guess the answer to your question, Jack, is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyway, that's it for me. It's late. People want to go home.
You. Okay.
Actually,
Anything
people
else?
are home.
You want to push the leave button?
Motion to push the leave button.
Yes. Second, the motion to push the leave button.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. Great meeting. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night, all. That went fine.
Appreciate it.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Good night.